Have you ever reached a moment when you realized it was time to leave? Not because the road ahead was easy, but because staying was slowly breaking you? If you enjoy Bible stories told clearly and deeply, helping you understand and enjoy Scripture, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part of this journey through Genesis. Jacob had lived in Haran for many years. What began as a temporary stay had turned into decades of labor, love, loss, and growth. He arrived with nothing but a staff. Now he had wives, children, servants, and large flocks. Outwardly, Jacob looked blessed. But inwardly, something was wrong. Jacob noticed a change. Laban's sons began to speak bitterly. They whispered that Jacob had taken everything that belonged to their father. Their eyes followed him with suspicion. Their respect was gone. Even Laban himself was no longer the same. The warmth had faded. The smiles were forced. The favor was gone. Jacob felt it in the air. He was no longer welcome. This was not just jealousy. It was fear. God's blessing on Jacob was undeniable, and it made others uncomfortable. Then the Lord spoke to Jacob again. "Return to the land of your fathers," God said, "and to your relatives, and I will be with you." This was not just a suggestion. It was a command. God had been faithful in Haran. Now it was time to go home. But leaving would not be simple. Jacob called Rachel and Leah out to the fields, away from their father's house, away from listening ears. He spoke honestly to them. He told them how their father had changed his wages again and again, how Laban had tried to control his future, how God had protected him anyway. Jacob reminded them of the dream he once had, where God showed him the flocks and revealed that the blessing did not come from tricks, but from God himself. Then Jacob said something important. "The God of my father has been with me," he said, "and now he has told me to leave." Rachel and Leah listened, and something surprising happened. They agreed. They spoke with one voice. They reminded Jacob that their father had treated them like outsiders, that he had sold them for labor, that the wealth God had taken from Laban truly belonged to them and their children. "Do whatever God has told you," they said. So Jacob planned his escape. He waited for the right moment, when Laban had gone far away to shear his sheep. Time mattered. Speed mattered. Silence mattered. Jacob gathered his wives, his children, his servants, and his flocks. He crossed the Euphrates River and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. But something else happened quietly. Rachel took her father's household gods and hid them. Why did she do this? Scripture does not fully explain. Some believe she wanted protection. Others believe it was an inheritance claim. Some believe it showed that even Rachel still struggled to fully let go of her past. Faith and fear often live together. 3 days passed before Laban discovered the truth. Jacob was gone. His daughters were gone. His grandchildren were gone. His wealth was gone. Laban was furious. He gathered his men and pursued Jacob for 7 days. Dust rose from their feet. Anger drove their pace. Confrontation was coming. But before Laban could reach Jacob, God intervened. God came to Laban in a dream at night and warned him. "Be careful," God said. "Do not say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." God was setting boundaries. When Laban finally caught up with Jacob in the hills of Gilead, the tension was heavy. Families stood watching. Servants waited. The air was thick with fear. Laban spoke first. "What have you done?" he demanded. "You ran away secretly. You carried off my daughters like captives. Why didn't you tell me? I would have sent you away with celebration. Why did you steal my gods?" Jacob was shocked. He knew nothing about the stolen idols. In confidence, Jacob answered boldly, "Anyone you find with your gods shall not live." He did not know what Rachel had done. Laban searched everywhere. He entered Jacob's tent, Leah's tent, the servants' tents. Finally, he entered Rachel's tent. Rachel had hidden the idols inside her camel saddle and sat on it. She spoke calmly. "Don't be angry, my lord," she said. I cannot stand up because of my condition." Laban searched, but he did not find the gods. Then Jacob exploded. Years of frustration poured out. He reminded Laban of 20 years of hard labor, how he worked through heat and cold, how he bore losses himself, how Laban changed his wages 10 times. "If the God of my father had not been with me," Jacob said, "you would have sent me away empty-handed." Laban had no answer. Finally, Laban spoke softer words. He claimed everything was his, but he knew the truth. God was with Jacob. So they made a covenant. They gathered stones and built a heap. They ate together. They agreed that neither would cross the boundary to harm the other. Laban kissed his daughters and grandchildren and blessed them. Then he returned home. Jacob stood still for a moment, watching the dust settle. He was finally free. Genesis 31 teaches us that God knows when it is time to move. Not every door that once opened should remain open forever. God protects us even when others pursue us. God sets boundaries even when people try to control us. Jacob left Haran not as a servant, but as a man blessed by God. But the journey was not over. Ahead of him waited Esau, the brother he once betrayed. And the most difficult meeting of his life was still to come. If you enjoyed this Bible story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Because Jacob's past is catching up with him, and his faith is about to be tested like never before. Jacob had finally left Laban behind. Years of control, manipulation, and fear were over. But as Jacob moved forward, a greater fear rose in his heart. The past he had run from was now directly in front of him. Esau was coming. As Jacob continued his journey toward home, something unusual happened. Angels of God met him along the way. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." He named the place Mahanaim, meaning 2 camps. God was reminding Jacob that he was not alone. Heaven was moving with him. Still, fear did not leave Jacob's heart. Jacob sent messengers ahead to his brother Esau in the land of Seir. He wanted peace. He wanted safety. He wanted forgiveness. The messengers carried careful words. Jacob called Esau my lord and referred to himself as your servant. He told Esau about his flocks, his servants, and his return. Jacob was not trying to show off. He was trying to survive. When the messengers returned, their report shook Jacob to the core. "Esau is coming to meet you," they said, "and 400 men are with him." 400 men. Jacob's heart sank. This was not a friendly visit. This was an army. Fear gripped him tightly. Memories flooded back, Esau's anger, the stolen blessing, the threat of death. Jacob did not panic without thinking. He acted wisely. First, he divided his people into 2 groups. He said to himself, if Esau comes and attacks one group, the other may escape. This was strategy, but it was also fear speaking. Then Jacob prayed. This prayer was different from before. This was not a vow. This was desperation. "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac," Jacob prayed, "Lord, you who said to me, 'Go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper.' I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become 2 camps." Jacob paused, and then he pleaded, "Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, because I am afraid. I fear that he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, 'I will surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea.'" Jacob reminded God of his promise, not because God had forgotten, but because Jacob needed to remember. After praying, Jacob prepared gifts. Not one gift. Not 2. Many. He selected goats, sheep, camels, cows, donkeys, hundreds of animals. He arranged them in separate groups. Each group would go ahead of him, one after another, with space between them. He gave instructions to his servants. When Esau asks, "Who do you belong to?" tell him, "They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau." Jacob hoped to soften Esau's heart. He hoped humility could heal what deception had broken. That night, Jacob stayed behind alone. He sent his wives, his servants, and his children across the river Jabbok. Everything he owned went ahead of him. Jacob was left completely alone. And then, something happened that would change him forever. A man appeared. Without warning, the man wrestled with Jacob. Not a short struggle. Not a quick fight. They wrestled through the night. Dust rose from the ground. Muscles strained. Breath grew heavy. Pain burned. Neither would let go. This was not an ordinary man. As the night wore on, the man touched Jacob's hip. Instantly, Jacob's hip went out of joint. Pain shot through his body. He could no longer fight with strength. But Jacob did not let go. The man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." Jacob answered with words that revealed his heart. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Jacob was no longer fighting for control. He was clinging for grace. The man asked him a question. "What is your name?" Jacob answered, "Jacob." The man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans, and have overcome." This was not a victory of strength. It was a victory of surrender. Jacob asked, "Please tell me your name." But the man did not answer. Instead, he blessed Jacob there. Then he was gone. Jacob looked at the place and said, "I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." He named the place Peniel, meaning the face of God. As the sun rose, Jacob limped away. He was changed. He walked with pain, but also with blessing. He walked slower, but stronger inside. He walked humbled, but transformed. Genesis 32 teaches us that sometimes the greatest battles are not with people, but with God. Fear can drive us to prayer. Brokenness can lead to blessing. And identity is not something we take, it is something God gives. Jacob entered the night afraid of Esau. He left the night changed by God. He would never walk the same again. And now, as morning breaks, Jacob must finally face his brother. If you enjoyed this Bible story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Because the meeting Jacob feared for decades is about to happen. Have you ever stood face to face with the person you hurt the most, not knowing whether they would embrace you or destroy you? The sun had barely risen when Jacob lifted his eyes and saw something that made his heart race. Esau was coming. In the distance, Jacob saw his brother, and with him, 400 men. The sight alone could have crushed him. Just the day before, Jacob had wrestled through the night with God. His body was sore. His hip was out of joint. Every step was painful. But Jacob did not turn back. He quickly arranged his family. He placed the servant women and their children in front. Then Leah and her children. And Rachel and Joseph at the back, the ones he loved most. This was not courage without fear. It was a careful attempt to protect those he loved, even if it meant putting others at risk. Then Jacob went ahead of them all. This was new. Before, Jacob always stayed behind. He let others face danger first. But now, limping and vulnerable, Jacob walked in front of his family to face Esau himself. As he approached his brother, Jacob bowed to the ground. Not once. Not twice. 7 times. Each bow was a sign of humility. Each step closer was an act of surrender. Jacob was no longer the man who stole blessings in secret. He had nothing left to hide. Esau ran toward him. Jacob must have braced himself for a blow. But instead, Esau threw his arms around Jacob. He embraced him. He held him tightly. And the two brothers wept. Years of anger, fear, and pain poured out in that moment. Words were not needed. Tears said everything. Esau spoke first. "What is all this I see?" he asked, pointing to the women, the children, and the flocks. Jacob answered honestly, "They are the children God has graciously given your servant." Then Jacob introduced his family. One by one, the servant women came forward with their children and bowed. Leah came with her children and bowed. Finally, Rachel and Joseph stepped forward and bowed. Esau was overwhelmed. "What do you mean by all these groups I met along the way?" Esau asked. Jacob said, "To find favor in your eyes, my lord." Esau shook his head. "I already have plenty, my brother," he said. "Keep what you have for yourself." But Jacob insisted. He pressed the gifts upon Esau. And then he spoke words that revealed how deeply he had changed. "If I have found favor in your eyes," Jacob said, "please accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me favorably." Jacob had seen God at Peniel. And now he saw grace in his brother's face. Esau accepted the gift. Then Esau offered something unexpected. "Let us journey on our way," he said. "I will accompany you." Jacob hesitated. He looked at his children. He thought of the flocks. He knew the pace Esau and his men could move at, and the pace his family could not. So Jacob spoke carefully. "My Lord knows that the children are tender and that I must care for the nursing animals. If they are driven hard even for one day, all the animals will die. Please let my Lord go ahead of his servant. I will move along slowly and will catch up." Esau offered to leave some of his men behind to help. But Jacob declined. This was not deception like before. This was caution. Jacob had learned that wisdom sometimes means choosing a different pace. So Esau returned to Seir. And Jacob went to Succos. There, Jacob built a place for himself and shelters for his livestock. That is why the place was called Succos. Later, Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, in the land of Canaan, the land God had promised to his fathers. For the first time, Jacob stood in the land not as a fugitive, but as a man restored. Jacob bought a piece of land where he pitched his tent. And there, he built an altar. He called it El Elohe Israel, which means, God, the God of Israel. This altar mattered. It was not built in fear. It was not built in escape. It was built in gratitude. Genesis 33 is not just about reunion. It is about transformation. Esau had changed. He was no longer driven by revenge. Jacob had changed. He no longer relied on manipulation. God had been working on both brothers, even when they were far apart. This story teaches us that reconciliation is possible. Humility opens doors that fear keeps shut. God can heal wounds that feel too old to heal. And sometimes, the miracle we fear the most is the one God has already prepared. Jacob feared Esau for decades. But God had already been working on Esau's heart. Jacob crossed the river limping, but he crossed into peace. If you enjoyed this Bible story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Because even after reconciliation, the journey of faith continues.